Salam sejahtera. Terima kasih saya ucapkan kepada pihak Intan kerana menjemput saya untuk membentangkan tesis sarjana saya. Saya Susie anak Ambin, kini berkhidmat di Jabatan Audit Negara. Izinkan saya untuk meneruskan pembentangan ini dalam bahasa Inggeris memandangkan tesis saya telah dihasilkan dalam bahasa Inggeris. Ladies and gentlemen, my master research entitled Antecedents of Intention to Adopt Audit Recommendation Among Public Sector Auditees. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the annual audit reports issued by National Audit Department of Malaysia, Jabatan Audit Negara, financial management in federal ministries and departments are unsatisfactory. Among the audit issues raised by National Audit Department are improper payments, poor contract administration, work, supplies and services rendered by suppliers were not in accordance to specifications stipulated in government contracts, and efficiency in the collection of government revenues. None of these issues are new. Audit recommendations serve as critical inputs for improving public sector governance and helping public sector organizations to take immediate corrective actions for the weaknesses and deficiencies highlighted by auditors. Why auditees were unable to fully adopt the prior year's audit recommendations? So my master research employ theory of planned behavior to examine whether auditees' attitude towards audit's recommendations, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control influence the intention to adopt audit recommendation. This study contributes to the growing body of knowledge in theory of planned behavior in the public sector setting in Malaysia, provide insights for federal departments to formulate a comprehensive strategy to ensure that auditees implement audit recommendations suggested by auditors and explore how attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control affect auditees' intention to adopt audit recommendation, particularly at departmental level. Under literature review, I will explain briefly about hypothesis development, research framework, and definitions of arrival. According to theory of planned behavior, the more favorable the attitude and subjective norm, and the greater the perceived behavioral control, the stronger should be the intention of a person to perform the behavior in question. Therefore, three hypotheses were proposed in this study as shown on the screen. The research framework was built to test the direct relationship between intention to adopt audit recommendations and the three variables: attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control. Auditees' intention to adopt audit recommendation will then is expected to lead to the successful implementation of audit recommendation. Used as dependent variable, intention to adopt audit recommendation is defined as willingness of auditees to make efforts to improve the financial management in the organizations by implementing audit recommendations stated in the audit reports. For the independent variables, attitude refers to perception of auditees on the importance of audit recommendations to improve management efficiency, cost savings, and enforce compliance with government regulations. Subjective norms, on the other hand, refers to auditees' perception on the mechanism used by Finance and Accounts Committee to monitor the implementation of audit recommendation. This study used Finance and Accounts Management Committee as reference group for subjective norm. For perceived behavioral control, this study employ measurement items for self-efficacy. Self-efficacy refers to the degree to which individuals perceive themselves as efficacious and capable. In the context of this study, it refers to how the auditees see themselves as capable to implement the audit recommendation. Now let's move to the research methodology. This study adapted measurement items by Noanita and Muhammad Mohit 2017 to measure intention, attitude, and subjective norm. It also replicated the original construct developed by Cass and Berg to measure perceived behavioral control. Survey question A were distributed to 228 public sector auditees in the selected federal departments in Sarawak, Malaysia. A total of 200 written questionnaires were analyzed by using SPSS and Smart PRS, and 72% of the auditees participated in this study were grade 22 and above, attached to finance, accounts and administration sections, with majority of them held the current position for at least 5 years. The result of path coefficient using Smart PRS software is 0.761, which implies 76.1% of variance in auditees' intention to adopt audit recommendation can be explained by attitude, subjective norm, and self-efficacy, while predictive relevance of 0.662, demonstrating that attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control have strong predictive relevance for auditees' intention to adopt audit recommendations. Statistical analysis prove the proposed hypothesis. The outcome of the hypothesis testing shows that attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control have significant positive effects on auditees' intention to adopt audit recommendation. This study contributes to the body of theoretical knowledge. It addresses the issue of under-authorization in public sector auditing research by testing theory of planned behavior in the public sector auditing context. This study also contributes to the betterment of managerial practices for Malaysian public sector, particularly at departmental level. So the first hypothesis result implies that auditees perceive that audit recommendations are important for the departments to improve management efficiency, cost saving, as well as enforce compliance with government regulations. Top management may emphasize the importance of audit recommendations by keeping proper documentation on the recommendations and analyze the impacts of the audit recommendation on management efficiency, cost saving, and compliance with government regulation. Besides, the Malaysian public sector also may consider to include implementation of critical audit recommendation as key performance indicators for accounting and finance staff. Auditors also play important role in managing the perception of auditees towards the importance of audit recommendations. Auditors need to strengthen the communication skills so that they can convey the audit recommendation to the auditees in a constructive manner during audit meeting. This includes avoid providing negative remarks that make auditees feel that the auditors are fault finders rather than adding value to the work. H2 result implies that auditees perception on the role of Finance and Accounts Management Committee in monitoring and implementation of audit recommendation has positive influence on auditor's intention to adopt audit recommendation. The role of Finance and Accounts Management Committee at departmental level has to be enhanced in monitoring the audit issues raised by auditors. Finance and Accounts Management Committee also should provide continuous assistance to the government department in ensuring that the audit recommendations can be implemented successfully. Perhaps Ministry of Finance might consider to relook at the existing circular that related to Finance and Accounts Management Committee, since the result of this study confirmed that auditors have the perception that the Finance and Accounts Management Committee are able to influence their intention to adopt audit recommendations. The result of the third hypothesis shows that this study is consistent with past studies where perceived behavioral control in the context of this study, self-efficacy has significant effect on behavioral intention. Therefore, auditors need to be trained with the right skills and knowledge, as the capabilities will determine how much efforts they will expend to adopt audit recommendations. Since this study only employs quantitative research, it doesn't provide sufficient details of the situation that influence the implementation of audit recommendation in Malaysian public sector. It is suggested that further research to be conducted using combination of both quantitative and qualitative research methods. It is advisable for the interview question to be prepared based on the outcome of the questionnaire survey and Auditor General's status reports on unresolved audit issues to capture the root cause for the repetitive audit findings. In conclusion, auditors' attitude, subjective norm, and perceived behavioral control have significant positive influence on their intention to adopt audit recommendation. Major players, including the top management, auditors, important reference groups, and auditors, play important role to mitigate the issue of failing to implement audit recommendations. Last but not least, this study also provides insights for agencies and the Malaysian government to formulate a comprehensive strategy to ensure full-scale implementation of audit recommendations, which at the end will help the Malaysian government to improve financial management and accountability that eventually leads to the good public governance practice in Malaysia. Thank you.